All right, so now on to our opening plenary, Regenerative Economies that Deliver for People and Planet. I am excited to bring onto the stage our moderator, Pietro Bertazzi from CDP, and he will call upon his panelists. Welcome, Pietro.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Great pleasure to be here with you. And what if our economies return more than what they took? Through cooperative models around the world, we are seeking investment of wealth in local communities, companies, the type profit Vice President, Sustainable Lead, Capgemini, Camilo, founder and executive director, Instituto, and Uros, Zver, partner infrastructure, Heidrick and Struggles. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Good morning. While we get, all our speakers, and I guess that we're missing one speaker, maybe we're looking for, okay, it's coming. Hi. Oh, pardon for that.
That's okay.
Leah, Leah Federman, partner of Heidrick and Struggles. The organization is the same, so thank you, Leah, for being with us today. Let me kick off sharing with you how we see this at CDP. And you see, indeed, we see regenerative economics as a natural evolution of what we believe is value. And it's about moving away from extractive business models, unlocking the potential for positive contribution to both nature and society. Through our work, of course, at CDP, for those who don't know us, we get information disclosed by thousands of companies around the world, as well as cities and regions. And we use this information to enable what we call Earth-positive decisions. And the idea underpinning this is quite simple. It's about environmental health. It's not a constraint on prosperity. It's a precondition to it. And indeed, the data that the companies disclose to CDP showcases that, indeed, there are humongous opportunities coming out of climate and environmental action. That's what we call the economic benefits of it. The data shows, I'll give you one example. For every dollar invested on physical risks, there are $21 coming back in opportunities. And this is something that is coming from the real economy, from the companies and financial institutions that disclose with us. How inspiring was to hear from Captain Watson, reminding us, why we're here, reminding us the journey that took us here. And allow me, being Italian, I could not help but making a reflection about an Italian philosopher that spoke about we need the pessimism of the intellect and the optimism of the will. And that's exactly what Dan Yoshpe reminded us with the Muchirao. We need to be all together, and we need to have the hope to solve the crisis that we're living. And indeed today, this is what we're discussing today. Regeneration is no longer a theory, it is happening. And that's what we are discussing in this panel. I'm joined by those great leaders making the case from finance to technology, from local action to corporate leadership. And let's begin with the Amazon, where indeed the balance between economy and ecology is the most visible. Jose, Amazon Investor Coalition. The Amazon is indeed the heart of the story. We are at the doors of the Amazon, but the Amazon is the heart of the story. How are investors coming to view regeneration not as a philanthropy, but as smart economy? And what are the examples that you can give us that will give us hope?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Pietro, and thank you for the World Climate Foundation for this invitation. Well, as a local, I would like to welcome all of you to Belém. It's a real pleasure to have this movement here. Well, I think there's three things we have to point at this time to talking about regeneration as an economic path. First of all, is that this is not a future. It's happening now, and it's needing to happening now. For three things, we are observing during our work in Amazon Investor Coalition. We are basically a global philanthropists networks that help us to be a regenerator facility as well as strategic and technical support for local communities to develop their own projects. Through these things, we have been noticed that the three things changed dramatically for the last 10 years. Most of all, the last 3 years, and especially because we hear that copy will come here, this accelerated. First of all, the risk became more explicit, right? So now all the pressure in the territory, climate risk, government challenges, legal insecurity, and territorial pressures converge in Amazon. It's our daily basis matters here. So do not regenerate is to take the higher risk, not continuity, to do nothing for the future. So this is the first thing. The second thing is investors, are beginning to understand that regeneration as both risk reduction and mechanism and value creation strategy. Why is that? Because this stabilized supply chains, increase predictability, reduce conflict, and strengthens intangible assets as trust, reputation, and market access. During my past time into a large cosmetic companies here in Amazon, we have to dealt with problems with supply chains. And that's this long-term relationship building. We not can do this by passing through the communities and simply deploy our strategy and ask them to produce more in large scale because the time of the forest is different. Sorry. The time in the forest is different. So regeneration is one local demand for all of those populations. Third of all, hybrid capital models combine investment, philanthropy, and public policy, which is helping us to set what we've been used to call the structures that help us to be more effective to the market. So pre-productive and pre-competitive arrangements, the invisible infrastructures that held all the Amazonian markets. And regarding the economy, we must remember that a huge percentage of all the Amazonian economy is informal. So we must help as well to bring more formality. And to do that, we need to understand how to educate those small communities into basic entrepreneurship things. For example, just to become formal, there's some population that doesn't work with banks because they are afraid to do so. So how can we do that? Implement some programs that educate them and help them to understand that if you want to go to the market, you need the basic structures to do that, friendly structure to do that in the proper way. One of the examples to finish my speak here, one of the examples is Belterra Agroforestries, which is led by my good friend Almir Ortega. Belterra is a startup. I think it's not more than startups, it's become a huge company. They are deploying agroforestry systems into degraded area and helping to have more coverage, forest coverage, helping with carbon as well as doing the complementation of production agrosystems. So now you can use a single piece of land to have more than one culture. So this is facing the monoculture problem that we have for decades here in Amazon. And by saying that, I think this is one of the most challenging things that we have, because we need more blended finance, we need more operational capability here into the ground, and not simple receiving people to come and then live with all the knowledge, but being here, building trust, and build more a new regenerative path for us.
Wonderful. Many thanks, Jose. It starts with risks, many opportunities, the need for scaling it up. And indeed, you know, in order to do this, we need people. We were reminded that Anatoni, the CEO of the COP, was indeed, saying, Dan Yoshpes mentioned, starts with people, it ends with people. So Kamila, regeneration begins with people. And I think, you are very much close to this, and we'd love to hear from you. What tenets should govern economies that enable restoration rather than extractions? And what have you learned? What can you share with us, the learnings from the women and indigenous communities?
Thank you so much for having me. First, I need to say that nothing starts with people and ends with people. Everything starts with nature. Everything starts with biodiversity. Humans are just a small piece of everything. And every time we center everything on us, that is the issue. The past 100, 150 years, we've been centered all development in our needs and our, what we want, what shareholders want. And then we are compromising our lifetime. We are compromising our way of living because we think that design should be centered in humans, not in nature. So if we redesign stuff to be centered in nature as a whole when we are part of the system, then we maybe stood a chance to continue enjoying this beautiful planet that we have a pleasure to have. I've been learning so much. To be honest with you, I'm in the wrong place to talk about their way of living because they are in the room. But I've been humbled enough to be welcome in some communities to work together. And what I believe is that if we can drive governance that is cooperative, that is collaborative, that it's not just centered in the only economic vision that we have. We are in the climate space, and we still are driving climate conversations through economic lens. Yes, it matters. Yes, we need. Yes, we live in a capitalistic time, and we need to work on economy. But if we just drive our interests based on the economy, we are losing the people, we are losing the ecosystems, we are losing the way of living, the actual build conservation. I would say that my three main learnings was, one, if you are not in relationship with nature, you're probably working against her. Two, if you are thinking that development is just building more stuff, maybe you need to rethink what you're building, because development is in this time where climate is compromised, where 9 million people die every year, and most of them are kids because they can't breathe. But when you see the documents, it's not saying that they are dying because of air pollution, but they are getting sick and sick. Tons of people, indigenous people, are dying because of contamination of water, but in their testaments are not right. They die because of water pollution. They die because of cancer. They die because they are contaminated. So if we can relate it, the climate issues with the killing that is happening, that's what I'm learning with people. They the way they live is the way that conserve the nature, is the way that protect the nature. It's really, really important to think about it, that they are living just in 5% of the entire land space that we have and protecting over 80% of the biodiversity that we talk so much about it. Biodiversity is not just how fauna and flora works. It's the air we breathe, is the bacteria that we don't see, is the microbiomes inside of our bodies that we don't know. And every part of us is part of the land as well. I feel that we are missing passion, but most than passion, we are missing love. One thing that I've learned with community is that they never lose love for the earth. They never lost the vision of being integrated, of being one. And sometimes, a few years ago, I was in a meeting with a group of CEOs and a few teenagers talking, And one of them told me, like, you know, when I was your age, I was that passionate, and then reality came. But I'm here to say to you that reality is on our door right now, and if we lose passion, and if we lose the vision of prosperity that is common prosperity, all of us are lost it. You know, your kids, your grandkids won't be here. Probably you won't see a world where we are living in 2 to 2.5, 3 Celsius. But like if they experience that in 2100, that will be a disgrace. You know, and my learnings with communities has been, if you don't plant a tree for you, you plant a tree for your grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
I feel that like the mission that we have right now is to keep the way of living and bring that to our homes. I don't know how many of you have plants at home, but tons of outskirts people and outskirts neighbors in big cities, they're not having plants at home anymore, just because it's expensive to keep them. You know, nature became an expensive thing. We can integrate nature again to our lives. I feel like if we use our power now to bring regeneration to cities, you know, to green our homes and our schools, everything's gonna be better. And I hope people in this room that can really make the difference bring regeneration as a lifestyle, not just an investment point of view. Thanks so much.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you, Camila. And I would argue, you started saying, you know, it's not about people, but then, you know, you are calling upon people to bring regeneration. So it is about people. And we need to consider ourselves as part of the ecosystem, not the superior, you know, species. But indeed, you know, the problem started with people, and the solution is to start with people. So actually, we jump to you, Sol, and technology can scale progress and harm at the same time. How can digital innovation assist companies to reconcile profit and well-being of the ecosystems in this planet? Please.
Great. Thank you, first of all, for having us here, the World Climate Foundation, Pietro, for convening this specific conversation. I wanted to sort of start with a couple of personal comments, if I could. The first one is I don't think I could have imagined following Captain Paul Watson ever on stage, and I don't know if he's still in the room, but I want to acknowledge the fact that my son chose his career, his education, in very large part because of the work of Captain Watson. So it's just an inspiration. He is the definition of action, by the way. We talk about action. The second thing is, I think, you know, Sir Andrew Steer mentioned the fact that he was at Rio in '92. I think I may be the only other person who was in Rio in '92 as well. And, you know, yeah, when people say that, by the way, they say, well, you know, well, I was 5 years old. Actually, I was 45 years old. I take a lot of supplements. So, but jokes aside, you know, this is an important conversation for us. Those of us who've been working this topic since then have always sought to get to the inflection point where a sustainability decision by an enterprise is the default decision as opposed to the exception. And we've been working to obviously integrate the business case of sustainability and carbon management into everything we do. And that's always been the ambition and the journey, frankly. And you know, we at Capgemini put out every year something we call the World in Balance. And this year's report was actually very telling in many ways. You know, it's based on surveying 2,000 plus senior executives across multiple verticals, across multiple titles, not just chief sustainability officers. And there's several things that we discovered. One is that 2 out of 3 regard sustainability as a value creator, not as a cost center, which is huge, 2 out of 3. And 3 out of 4 see it as a future-proofing strategy, not as a compliance issue, but a future-proofing strategy, not against just climate, but against the business. So that begins to tell us at Capgemini that maybe we're at that inflection point where sustainability investments and decisions are based on, you know, again, a default position, not the exception. Now, that's the good news. But there's also some not so good news, frankly, which is something that we've come to recognize at Capgemini and among our partners and clients, which is that's just not enough. I mean, we're still going backwards, to be perfectly honest with you. We're still going backwards. It's nice to celebrate the successes, but let's be clear, we're still using twice as many resources on a planetary scale that the Earth can generate every year. That's not sustainable. We're basically living. If any of you have read the book Collapse by Jared Diamond, we're living on Easter Island before Easter Island disappeared on a global scale. We're manufacturing things at a rate of that every week that outweigh every human being on the planet every single week. The stuff that we make as human beings now outweigh everything that nature makes. So that's not sustainable. So the answer for us at Capgemini is to obviously continue to promote and to advise our partners and clients about the value creation of sustainability, but to take that discussion one step further, and it's towards regenerative and reparative. And in that vein, we have launched into an initiative, a global campaign, along with our good friend Paul Polman. I hope all of you know Paul Polman, ex-CEO Unilever, as a follow-up to his book with Andrew Winston on Net Positive. We got together and said, well, look, this makes sense philosophically. What does it take to operationalize the tenets of reparative, regenerative business models? Full stop. What has to be true for every enterprise to upend their business model so that it's not about shareholder value alone, but about stakeholder value? Not about measuring widgets, but what does that widget fundamentally do to improve the wellness and the health of every user of that widget? And so we've undertaken that. And it's an exciting journey for us. We've developed a maturity model based on that. We start, of course, with what does the leadership of that organization look like? What do they have to manifest? What does a servant leader look like? What do they act like? How do they cascade that down to their peers? What does an IT team look like that measures every single electron that goes into its systems and every carbon emission reduction? It's possible. And so we've developed a maturity model along, by the way, not just Capgemini, but the entire community of net positive companies. Now there's 200 of those companies that have engaged in this process with us. So what does that look like? What has to be true? And we believe that's where we need to go. Because as aggressive as we are, and I think as successful as we've been on promoting the value creation sustainability, we are still going backward. So we need to now repair and regenerate.
Many thanks, Sol. And indeed, we need frameworks, we need, models, and thank you for the hard work that you are giving us, in that space. We're moving towards a bit more tangible, I will say, on the ground, because of course what you do is very tangible, but on the ground with Rodrigo. Is it possible to combine conservation and production in a tropical landscape? How does it work?
Thank you, Pietro. Thank you as well, the World Climate Foundation, for this panel. It's great to be here. I just want to start saying that Kamila and Pietro have a good point. It's not only about people, it's not only about nature, it's about nature and people. And that's about production and conservation as well. But I want to start with some questions just to be a bit provocative, because it's quite cold in this room, the air conditioning. So we should save a bit energy here, reducing the air conditioning as well. How to foster competition. What's competition? Is cooperation within a competitive environment. How you collaborate in a competitive environment. That's one of the challenges we're facing, not only private sector, but between governments as well. How to scale proven solutions. How to further engage the private sector in this journey. How to implement cross-sector solutions that deliver for people and the planet. It's not about increasing ambition. We have enough ambition. Now it's about delivering to people and the planet and the forests. Responding to the current challenges and joining forces to deliver concrete solutions. Because when we talk about mutirão, and it was mentioned several times today and throughout the week, mutirão is about different actors with different skills and stakeholders with different and complementary strengths and competencies to jointly implement solutions. So we have a role, and each one has an important role to play. And we are talking about solutions that deliver increased resilience, increased regenerative capacity, and have the capacity to regenerate ecosystems and business models. What's it? When we talk about regenerative business models, I will talk specifically about supply chains and the work within supply chains we have been doing with many other partners as well. What are business models that deliver adaptation in changing conditions that change really fast? And that's what we're facing. The global south, where we are now, has already proved solutions that are ready to be scaled up. We know what to do. There is enough money around. There is scalable solutions with available investment capacity that offer unique opportunities. But that's the question. If there's no shortage of solutions or adequate solutions, and there is money around globally to make things happen, what is halting us to raise the floor and to speed up change? So we have money, we have ideas, we have proven concepts, we have proven solutions, but what's halting us to be faster and to be more ambitious in terms of scale? But they have a good news. The good news is that a lot of already is going on, and it was said by the panelists before me. We are doing a lot of stuff, and a lot of important and relevant stuff, and opportunities are rising in terms of promoting regenerative business models. What can supply chains, now I come to the point Pietro was saying, to be practical, what can supply chains specifically deliver in terms of adopting regenerative principles? Or what do I mean by regenerative supply chains? This is already a reality, as I said, in different supply chains. I can mention coffee, cocoa, palm oil, oranges, citrus, where there are solutions being applied in Brazil and around the world as well. These supply chains are overcoming the challenge of integrating tropical forest conservation and production under the same hat. How you promote conservation and production within the same landscape at the same time. Companies are teaming up with organizations such as Solidaridad globally to promote and adopt regenerative practices in agriculture, restore degraded land, adopt agroforestry systems, reduce carbon emissions and reduce deforestation, and increase at the same time the yields or the stability of yields, producing more or stabilizing yields, adopting those regenerative practices. And this is good for farmers, good for forests, and good for climate. So it's about win-win, it's about shared values, about finding the ways where we can collaborate and find solutions that will benefit not only one sector, one segment, but overall will bring improvement and better. Yeah, I will close. And at the end of all, it increases food security and the supply continuity and stability. What next? I'm finishing now. We need more collaboration to speed and scale, to generate the impact not the impact we want, the impact we need and the world needs and the globe needs. We just released, I just wanted to say, this is a publication we just released at COP that brings some really practical examples of how bioeconomy and regenerative supply chains are bringing concrete solutions to the challenges we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. And indeed, have a look at the publication. I was skimming it because they gifted me a copy, and it's quite insightful. Now, looking towards you, Leah, you work with a lot of businesses, and what is your take in terms of what changes you see among businesses? Who are the leaders, and what are the leaders doing about regeneration as a core strategy towards not really branding?
So, good morning. We work with a lot of executives across all the sectors all around the world, especially with leadership, yes? And the leader of the future, we believe, and we are seeing in real in the companies, they think more across the business, not only inside the business. So if you have the KPIs that only think about profit, you are wrong. We have a special case with a client and a good friend of ours. That's the CEO of a mining company, a huge mining company. And he was implementing a company, their factory, inside a city that was near the disaster that happens in Brumadinho and Mariana. And all the families were against them, were against the implementation of the factory, and were against the business at all. And they were dividing and telling him stories about their families and about the people that they lost. And okay, the community of all the city was against, and they didn't approve the factory. So he started to meet the families and discuss with the families about their needs, about the needs of the community, the needs of the families, the need of the environment, everything that he could do differently. Nowadays, is one of the major mining companies that we have in Brazil, the third in the top 3, okay? And the families that lose people started working with him. And what's I think the example here and the learning is that the leader needs to understand the community and the city that he's working with, not only thinking about his profit. So that's the capability that we believe is the leader of the future. The leader that can make a difference without only thinking about themselves. And I am on time. I was fast.
Oh, wonderful. No, thank you so much. Thank you for your insights. And I was indeed thinking that it becomes more and more a risk. So this is really putting the pressure on the companies. And I believe that we should take a moment just to think back that when the Paris Agreement was reached, we were on a pathway of 4 degrees temperature rise. We're far from the 1.5, but we are on a 2.7 degrees trajectory. So multilateralism works. We know what the solutions should be, and as the COP, the Bertazzi, the implementation COP, we need to make it happen. And today we heard examples of this, and we need to accelerate. So let's continue the dialogue in the spirit of Muchirao, and thank you so much. Help me to thank all the panelists for this insightful discussion, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Pietro.